Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for the earth is mine. Today on the Biblical Path of Life, we'll see how God reveals himself to his people. According to the key verse, God's people are a peculiar treasure. In Exodus chapter 19, God showed himself mightily to his people. Here we see God give direction to Moses so he can relay those instructions to the people. In the last lesson, we saw how God revealed himself through mighty works. Now, the people needed to understand the relationship between God and them. In Exodus 19, verse 5, it says, Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, All that the Lord hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. So here we see that God tells the children of Israel that they're so special to him that they would constantly be under his watch and care. He would guard and protect them as one would a special treasure. A relationship was to be established. This was to be the best part. They were allowed the privilege of having a covenant relationship with God himself. They had immediate access to God. By having a relationship with God, they placed themselves under his authority to obey him and his word. But to become a holy nation required a change in lifestyle. They had to obey God's commands. When the people heard what God required of them, they committed themselves to do it. Then we see that God called for his people to meet at the foot of his mountain, Mount Sinai, so he could speak to Moses where the people could hear. On the third day there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud upon the mountain. There was also the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud. This terrified the people. Then there was smoke upon the mountain, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. Moses had set a boundary around the mountain so that the people would not go up on it, because God had commanded it. While the trumpet still sounded long and loud, Moses spoke to God, and God answered him by a voice. God then told Moses to go down, and then come up the mount without the people. Exodus 20 records the 10 commandments that God speaks, and Moses recorded. God himself gave these commands to the people. Notice that the first 4 deal with our relationship with God. The following 6 deal with our relationship with other people. First, our relationship must be right with God, and then we can have a proper relationship with others. By giving the people these commands, they could easily recognize their sinful conditions. It still took faith to do what God commanded them to do. After the commandments were given, the people removed themselves from the mountain, and they asked for Moses to speak to them instead of God, and they would hear. They were afraid to hear God speak. This was actually the exact response that God wanted from his people, to fear him, that ye sin not. As you see here, and throughout the rest of the scriptures, fearing God is a good thing, and it keeps us from sinning. After this happened, Moses drew near to God and heard the rest of the words God had for his people. Let's take a look at how God takes care of his people. In Exodus 23, we see that God had promised to send an angel to go before them. Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way, and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Now we consider that angel to be a pre-incarnate Christ. In other words, this was Jesus before he was born as a man on the earth. God told them to obey that angel's voice. God's name is in him. Beware of him, and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Also see in the New Testament where Jesus is speaking when he said, that the Father is in me, and I in him. When God promised to send that angel, he was to keep them and lead them to the place God prepared for his people, the Promised Land. As long as they obeyed his voice and did all he commanded them, God promised to be an enemy to their enemies and an adversary to their adversaries. God commanded them not to bow before false gods or to serve them, nor to do after their works. They were to completely remove them and any semblance of them when they entered into the land God promised them. They were reminded to serve God and him only. When the people heard the words of the Lord, they answered with one voice. They would do it all. Moses then wrote it down and read the book of the covenant to the people. Next, we see that God commanded the people to build a tabernacle. Moses went back up the mountain, and Moses was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. God tells Moses specific details about the tabernacle and its implements. One important thing to understand about the tabernacle is that everything about it was to show them Jesus. Each piece that was to go into the tabernacle was a picture of Christ and what he would do for them. You'll find a picture of some of these parallels between Jesus and the implements of the tabernacle in the book of John. Just by taking a look at these short verses is a great way to see the correlation between the New and the Old Testament and how Jesus fits into the Old Testament. While God was giving this information to Moses, the people had already started to forget God. The people last saw Moses when he went up on the mountain to talk with God. The people had lost hope that Moses would return. They demanded that Aaron make them gods to worship. Notice how quickly the people forgot God. If we as Christians do not keep in constant communication with God and keep him forever before us, we too will forget God and replace him with other gods of our own. When Aaron finished fashioning the calf from all the people's earrings, he presented it as their god and proceeded to worship it. As soon as God saw this, he wanted to destroy them. But Moses interceded on their behalf. He reminded God of the covenant with his people and the witness it would be to the nations for God to forsake his own people. We see God turn from the evil he had planned. The people were spared. Moses descended from the mountain with the 2 tables of the testimony in his hand, which God had written with his own hand. When Joshua heard the noise in the camp, he thought war had broken out, but it was the noise of singing. When Moses came near enough to see the calf and the dancing, he became furious. He threw down the tables and broke them. He then took the calf and burned it in the fire and ground it to powder, mixed it with water and made the people drink it. Aaron then lied about everything. Moses demanded a decision. All who were on God's side were to stand with Moses. Anyone who did not stand with Moses was killed, about 3,000 men. Remember that the people knew what God expected of them, and they agreed to do it. Because they had not done what God promised, they would be punished. The next day, Moses told the people how great a sin it was. He then went back up the mount to intercede on the people's behalf. God once again promised that the angel would go before them, but God would punish their sin. Even when the people forsook God, he reaffirmed his promise with Moses. And the Lord said unto Moses, Depart and go up hence, thou and the people which thou hast brought up out of the land of Egypt, unto the land which I swear unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, Unto thy seed will I give it. And I will send an angel before thee, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. His angel Jesus would be with them and go before them. By Exodus 40, the tabernacle was ready to be set up. They did so and placed all the implements in the correct places. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The cloud by day and the fire by night always remained upon the tabernacle for all the Israelites to see. When it lifted and moved, the people were to follow. Just like the children of Israel, God wants us to be a peculiar treasure to him. He wants to guard and protect us just like he did the children of Israel. But in order for him to do that, we need to have faith and trust in him. And one of the ways we can show our faith is through our obedience to him. Thanks for studying the Bible with us today. For a deeper study, you'll find the recommended Bible readings in the description below, and you'll also find links to purchase the written version of our Bible study series. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to continue to grow in your walk with God.